From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live, the show where you get to ask the top composers your questions. Thanks so much for being here. It's taken Hollywood this long to make Bros, the first unabashedly, unapologetically queer film aimed not only at its target audience, but people of every persuasion who love producer Judd Apatow's brand of raunchy rom-coms with the heart. For a film where Billy Eichner's Unlucky at Love Manhattanite keeps referencing the New York City set rom-com greats, the casting of MARC SHAIMAN as Bros' composer is particularly inspired. A musician who certainly never failed to be loud and proud when giving his comedy-centric scores a wonderfully big voice, Shaiman came of age in Manhattan's cabaret and jazz scene with such greats as Bette Midler and Billy Crystal before breaking a composing leg with the very unlikely score for Misery. Shaiman has certainly expressed more laughs than pain since, with Sleepless in Seattle, City Slickers, The First Wives Club, The Addams Family, The American President, and Mary Poppins Returns. Wearing emotion and humor on his sleeve with a nostalgia for old-school themes that made so many of his endearing scores seem like Broadway musicals waiting to happen when not on the Great White Way himself, Shaiman has made musical activism a hoot, from political spoofs to projects like In and Out and Hairspray, all of which make him an ideal voice to pass the torch to a new grinder-obsessed gay generation, whose flighty ideas about actual love and romance Shaiman grounds for Bros. With the typically lush, yet intimately heartfelt score of strings, piano, and guitar that's mainly the musical straight man amidst the comedic snark and genuine pathos, all the while showing his inimitable talent for song satire, here in the vein of Garth Brooks. It's a score by When Harry Met Sally's master of the modern rom-com that makes Bros' importance and message as timeless as the movie relationships its characters can only dream about measuring up to. And now here's a composer who's never been shy when it comes to melodic scoring, MARC SHAIMAN. Thanks for joining us on The Score, Mark.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Now, you are literally the ideal composer to do Bros. How did you come aboard the film?
I read about it in the trades that they were making a gay rom-com, and Judd Apatow and Billy Eichner. I had worked with Judd Apatow just once when we co-wrote a song with Adam McKay for Will Ferrell and Jack Black and John C. Reilly for the Oscars one year. What was it called? A Comedian at the Oscars. It was just one of those, funny songs in the midst of it all, and it went well. I remember, and that's the only way I knew Judd Apatow. And I would write him emails since then when I saw one of his movies and saying I love this, I love that, and what have you. And I also knew Billy Eichner from just New York scene that I live in, and loved Billy on the Street. Like, oh my God, when I first saw that, I was just, this is the funniest, greatest, unique thing I ever saw. So I read in the trades that they're making a gay rom-com. And so I luckily had both their emails and just wrote them and said, well, I'm the king of rom-coms and I'm gayer than a goose. I gotta write this score. Who else are you going to hire? And luckily they agreed right away. And that was that.
I mean, again, you're talking about the kind of whole meta aspect of the film and the score, where people are referencing When Harry Met Sally and all of these movies that essentially your scoring really helped put on the map. I mean, did that hit you right off the bat?
Well, I mean, I knew that was why I was perhaps, the right guy for the job. The movie itself didn't call for the, full on kind of, scores I've written for other big romantic comedies. It's a more intimate story. It's really just the two of them as far as when there's, scoring in the movie. There's lots of characters, but most of those scenes don't really have score in them. So I was really just writing for the two lead characters. So it's more intimate. It's certainly the first time I've played piano all through a whole entire score. I mean, usually, I play the piano and I mock up all the cues and I work on the velocity of every single piano note so that it's just right, and hand it off, to the orchestrator, and then hear the orchestra play. And I certainly have never had any problem with the way any pianist has ever played what I've written. Guys like Randy Kerber who, play like me, but better. And they play it perfect every time. I have red light fever myself. I can't, I tried once. It was on Sleepless in Seattle. Piano player was late. And I said, this is crazy. We can start. I'll go play. I wrote it. I know just what it is. And I went out there and we started the first cue and I started playing and I wasn't with the strings. I don't know how session piano players do it, but they learn how to play with strings in a way that, I was just looking at Artie Kane and the conducting and listening to the click and putting it right on the click, but the strings are always a little behind. And I realized right away, oh, I can't do this. Well, wait. Anyway, did I answer your question? Are we done?
Absolutely.
Wait, I feel like I've been talking for an hour.
You can talk for 3. You mentioned Artie Kane. I just have to give a shout out to just such a wonderful musician who passed away recently.
He was the greatest. He's the absolute greatest.
When it comes to Broadway, you really are essentially playing the straight man. There's very little about the score that actually plays comedy. What was that like hard for you to like avoid all the jokes and just essentially get to the drama?
No, it wasn't hard. It was just what it was. There's just the scenes with the comedy, and it weren't very much where I had to score. Although, the first 2 cues I score are him, taking an ass picture of himself for the guy on Grindr, and very much in the style of a Nora Ephron movie. So I didn't have to stretch too far for that. And then the next cue is when him and Aaron are texting each other, and that has that kind of light pizzicato string romantic comedy kind of vibe to it, just the kind of an engine underneath that's keeping it light, and so that works with the humor of the scene. And then from there on in, it's basically this, this 3/4 thing I came up with, and that pretty much plays the rest of the movie for the most part in various ways.
You're such a great thematic writer to even come up with that theme. Is it just something that hits you, or do you just spend like hours at the piano tinkering about to get something like that?
Yeah. I used to spend days and days and days, and now maybe it's more hours and hours and hours. Maybe I should spend more time, and I don't score movies much anymore. So to even speak of it in the present tense seems almost odd, but, I was coming up with other more kind of love themes, more, things more up, and then I don't know, I was just at home at my house upstate and I was looking out the window, and I don't know what made me go to this, but I did, and I kept going at it, and then I played Nick Stoller, the director, a few different choices. And this is the one that we kind of settled on, and then put it up against the scene. I was like, oh, that works nicely. That first walk and talk that they have, it just kind of lets you know that these two guys are made for each other, even though they may not know it yet. And there's a tinge of countryness to kind of the way I'm playing the piano here and there. That's for Aaron. And it has this kind of circular thing of this. It's good for walking and talking. Anyway, try not to analyze it too much. It just is how it came out.
And the country thing obviously ties into all the Garth Brooks jokes, and like you're like a master of like comedic songs, and this begins with "Love is Love." Tell me about writing that.
Oh, Love is Not Love.
Love is Not Love. My apologies.
Well, Billy came in knowing what he had wanted, and pretty much had almost written the basic idea of the song, the title, the lyrics. He was playing around with melodies. So I came in and I mean, they called me out of the blue and said, Billy suddenly decided that the scene should end with a song, this big grand gesture for the love story. And luckily, I was able to jump in my car and come out to New Jersey where they were filming. And we quickly rented a keyboard and set it up in a spare trailer. And I just sat in that trailer for 2 days. And whenever Billy could, he would come in while in between filming. And we just started working it out. It's got pretty much simple chords, but and Billy had written basically a 15-minute long song. So also working on condensing it and figuring out how to like connect it all. But as I often used to say about on South Park, I was Igor to Trey Parker's Dr. Frankenstein. And in this case, I was Igor to Billy Eichner's Dr. Frankenstein. Just, helping. I was more the obstetrician than the father. I was just, I was the forceps. I was musical forceps. But I was in there enough to, that we did co-write it, and then I used it a bit in the movie. I actually used it a little more with what I delivered to them. They didn't always use what I delivered to them as I delivered it, and I think the one or two moments where that melody got used, it's on the soundtrack, but it's not in the movie. Mm.
Now we've got our first question. It's from Joshua David Mitchell. Hi, Mark. As a composer veteran of the comedy genre, how have you found that your approach to comedy scoring has changed since the 90s? Thanks for all of your time and love your music.
Well, as I noted, I don't score many movies anymore. So I don't know. I can't say. I guess, nowadays, I mean, the 90s was a perfect moment for me and those kind of musical rom-coms. I mean, where I could, kind of step forward with some of the comedic writing. I mean, no one wants it to be like, wah, 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 wah. But, I could have fun, and I did have fun on movies like City Slickers. I mean, to the point where I gave my name a fanfare in the opening credits. This movie, but not this movie. I knew they wouldn't want that kind of. It didn't call for it. Every movie is different, so I don't think I've answered the question at all. But I just, every movie is just you're meeting at this new. You're on a new blind date.
Now we've got a question from the Bond Music. Hi. These days, most romantic comedies use songs instead of dramatic score. Is it easier for a composer to do score for such movies, as you need to do less music, or is it harder? And if it is, why?
Yeah, I would guess it's a good question. I guess one could say it's almost harder because as a composer, you want more real estate to be able to write more and create things that will pay off by the end of the movie. And in this case, I didn't have as much real estate because so many of the moments in the movie were, like so many of the rom-coms I worked on, they put, songs. They have Our Love Is Here to Stay and When I Fall in Love. And then a lot of the scenes take place in clubs. So there's dance music happening. And so I had just enough. But yeah, I think, any composer would love to just have more time.
Now, Billy's character in the film is exceptionally caustic. He's always in your face. Whereas, the gentleman he's interested in is completely chill, super mellow. Having such a kind of volatile character, was it important for the score to soften him up a little bit, to get the audience more rooting for him?
Yeah, I think that's why we like that theme that I was playing, because in that, by establishing that up front, it does make Billy's antagonistic nature, even in that long walk and talk, it just kind of coats it a little. I know Judd Apatow at one point said, should Billy have a kind of sound or a theme that's an edgier kind of sound, but it didn't fit into the spots that we had spotted. for music, and so we ended up not doing that. It's really just their love theme, really.
Now, being from obviously like the Bette Midler, Billy Crystal generation, were you at all worried about kind of capturing the new gay zeitgeist with this film? Just how far they've come since those days.
Musically speaking,
Yeah.
No, I wasn't worried. Any music I write is going to be awfully gay. No, I didn't think about that at all. It just here was the job was to just score this love story, and the fact that they were gay just it made it. I relate even more so, and it appealed to me to see this kind of story being told. Not to mention all the other characters in it who are so funny. All the people at the museum, and yeah, but I relate to every movie I've ever worked on that didn't have gay characters as the leads, but it sure felt nice to see it.
I mean, there's a really lovely sense of nostalgia to the film that I think really suits your music. You have Harvey Fierstein showing up in one of the scenes, and again, there's a real love of these old rom-coms, and by proxy, even older jazz scoring that you put on them in the first place.
Oh, you know what? I can tell you a secret, and I don't. It's not. Oh, maybe it is on the soundtrack. At the end of the queue, going to Provincetown, I think it's called From Bed to Provincetown, or From Bed to P-Town. It ends on the reveal of Harvey Fierstein, and as he walks into his living room, the bass goes. So I sort of quote from from "You Can't Stop the Beat" from Hairspray in a very subtle way that no one will ever notice except for the people watching this right now. Will hopefully go buy a ticket to the movie or buy another ticket to the movie if they've already seen it, just to hear me put in that little musical Easter egg.
Or go see Hairspray again, which I saw I think 3 times on stage. We've got a question from Stubborn Bull. Of all the film scores you've written, which one do you wish more people could hear, and why?
Well, I can't complain about the amount of people who may have heard things like The American President, but that's a score I was very proud of. And I know how well it worked with the movie, and I would like to have had more opportunities like that movie. That although a romantic comedy of sorts, it had a serious nature to it as well. And the music, once again, like what we were just talking about, I don't think there's a moment in that movie where there's any kind of comedic tone to the music. So yeah, that was one that I would have like to have thought would have led to more films like that.
But yet you started out like probably the most unlikely film score debut ever, which was Misery.
Yeah, I was going to say, or Misery. I like for people to hear that and be reminded. I mean, I can watch it now, and I mean, I hear how inexperienced I was as I listen to it, but it works. The score works, and there are cues in there that I think. I mean, I had this wonderful experience a few months ago where I was honored by the Malaga Film Music Festival, where they put on 2 concerts in my honor. One that I was both in. One was just me at the piano and some local musical theater performers who were all fantastic. And then the last night was, this huge orchestra. And we created all these suites from all my different, more iconic movies I've gotten to score. And, hearing that Misery cue played by an orchestra, watching them play, that was thrilling. But it was scary. It was a scary job to suddenly land in my lap. There was nothing I'd ever done that would have made anyone think I could do it, including myself. But I had no choice. I had to do it.
Well, I mean, for me, I think like the 2 kind of comedy scores that I'd love people to know more of is One Night at McCool's and Flipped.
Jeez, I don't even remember them. I remember those were movies I worked on, but you could put a gun to my head. I couldn't remember any of the music. Um,
Well, one night at McCool's is this really kind of fun, funky score, and Flipped is this absolutely lovely Rob Reiner film about these two kids, who kind of all leading to their first attraction, and just they're completely different films stylistically, but really just wonderful comedies.
Thanks. Well, just like a nerd you are, that you would, that your favorites are always like the the bombs, the flops, the ones that no one sees or hears. Uh, yeah, man, you don't even see those ever, like channel hopping. I don't think I've ever channel hopped on either of those movies.
Well,
Mm,
I think that's the
sad.
job of a true movie nerd. We've got a question from Louis Versinelli. Hi, Mark Shaman. I'm a big fan of all your work. I love your score for Bros. My favorite track is Gay Heroes, Gay Guilt. It's along with the score is truly beautiful. Can you talk about that track?
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm trying to remember it now. It has this kind of wistful quality. In trying to be modern, my associate Sam, got me some of the more newer keyboard sounds that now, like, you can hit one note and it creates a rhythm underneath. I mean, those things have existed for a while now, but these were the most up to date ones. And so it was interesting to use that, and it creates like this little burbling, steady eighth note, but kind of syncopated underneath. And then on top of that, it has this wistful, nostalgic, and also for Aaron as he's looking at all these people that he realizes he doesn't know who they are, and he should, and that they've sometimes gave their lives to the cause, and so it has a melancholy as he watches it. So yeah, I would say that's maybe my favorite cue from the movie. It's only maybe like 30 seconds long at most, but and I tried to bring it back a few times, but they kept saying no, no, no. I mean, they understood why I was trying to bring it back. At one point he tries to break up with Billy Eichner, and I had a wisp of it as part of that cue, but they they asked me to go back to the drawing board.
Now, on that count, Peter Hackman would love to know how difficult was it to get the sound of the score just right, and how involved was Nicholas with the score?
As involved as any director always is, completely involved. In this case, the star, co-writer, and co-producer of the movie was also extremely involved, which, well, I guess with Billy Crystal, I've had that experience where Billy didn't direct City Slickers, or there must have been some other movie that he didn't direct that he starred in, but he was actively a part of coming over and listening to music, and in this case Billy was very much a part of it. And so they had no problem saying to me, that's not, they would always say, well, that's pretty, but can it, and I finally had to say, guys, you can stop saying it's pretty. I'm not looking for you to say it's pretty. I'm looking for you to say it's right. It works. I'm doing the job that the music in this moment is supposed to do. So you can just say, like, try to explain to me what it is I haven't done or what you want, but you don't need to keep saying it's pretty, kind of, it's pretty.
You mentioned City Slickers, which brings us to a question from Brian Michael Fuller. Hey, Mark, I was enjoying.
Everyone's got three names. I need a third name.
Mark Miller Shaman. I was enjoying the City Slickers soundtrack last week. Did you run into any of the issues with the musicians during the recording, or did you ever wonder if it would be too difficult to perform the score?
Funny you should say that. Maybe you've heard some stories. Once again, I was so naive in writing that I didn't know what would maybe be difficult for an orchestra or any specific musician. But sorry that I keep showing you the my bald spot. But so this. that theme, we had it for clarinet. Was it in the main title? But anyway, the poor guy was just like, because it was, uh, and we kind of started simplifying it to da 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 da, which also reminds me now. If anyone's as old as me, what is it? Is this the Brady Bunch or Gilligan's Island?
Gilligan.
That's Gilligan. That's scene like underscore from Gilligan's Island. So it's not exactly what I wrote, but I just when I'm playing it, I went, oh, that's a little too close to Gilligan's Island. Anyway, so then it was the beginning of there was this kind of electronic read. I forget there's a word for it. And just recently, at this concert in Spain, the guys from Cobra Kai were also having a concert, and I was like, oh my God, that's the City Slicker box. And so with that, we were able to go I think we recorded it, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-dum, and then we on another track went, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, so that we didn't have to do it together. Meanwhile, when it was all said and done, Dan Hagen said to me, man, that's not hard to play at all. You just needed to know this and that. But Dan wasn't on that chair that night. And of course, Dan Higgins since then has played it, perfectly. Anyway, I hope that clarinet player isn't watching right now.
Who knows?
God bless him.
Now, Dale's got a sound palette question. Misery, the 1980s horror films, just prior to Misery, were synth-driven. Some of these films now have a cheesiness factor due to the outdated sounds. As a result, Misery, which used eerie piano strings and woodwinds, has none of that. What kind of discussions did you have with Rob Reiner to read the sound for creating a timeless psychological thriller score?
I have no trouble saying out loud that I was just a student of the temp score on that one, which was, I think, for the most part, Jerry Goldsmith. And so it was opening my brain to wow, listen to this music. I mean, I understand music, but there I was really going wow, the strings can be doing this, and then the woodwinds can be doing this, or the upper strings are doing that, and the lower strings are doing it. It's almost like they're not even in the same key or time signature, and so I can't write like Jerry Goldsmith, but I can listen and try to learn and open up myself to that. And meanwhile, I was writing on a piano on the most beginnings of synthesizer and cheesy string sounds. It was an Alesis sequencer. It was this big, and it only had one little printout, or not printout, but little, whatever you call, where it said F sharp 1, the length of it, and the velocity. And I wrote that whole score with just that little window of every single note. And Rob is very particular. So I'm amazed now that he came over and was able to trust with what I was doing in my little room, and that it was going to sound fully orchestral. And then Dennis Dreeth was the orchestrator and the conductor on that score. And I might also add Lifesaver, because he understood what I was writing and that I didn't know about clicks. And, I knew about odd time signatures and all. So I just was playing, and he went in and listened to what I'd played and figured out, okay, let me make this a 9/8 measure. Let me make this a 2/4 bar with a fermata with 2 clicks going into this. I mean, he completely saved the day and saved my life by doing far more than any orchestrator or conductor should have to do. And I'm happy to say none have had to do since that movie, but that one was a huge learning curve for me.
Well, shout out to Dennis Street. I love his score for Dolph Lundgren's The Punisher. Still one of the best Punisher films done. Now you are on Broadway again. You are in rehearsals. Tell us, what is it for?
My partner, Scott, and I, my co-lyricist, I write lyrics too. He's my co-lyricist. We've written a new musical of Some Like It Hot. I say it that way because there already was a musical of Some Like It Hot called Sugar that was in the mid to early 70s. And even though everyone working on it were the gods of theater, Jules Stein, I mean, the greatest, one of the greatest writers of theater music that ever lived. And everyone else working on it was of his stature. But the show never quite, it didn't become like an evergreen. It's not done all the time. It's not revived. And perhaps it was because, as we learned with Hairspray, it's better not to be slavish to a movie. With Hairspray, we couldn't, because Hairspray has around 15 minutes of plot and 90 minutes of John Waters' charm to his insanity and his comedy, but there was hardly any plot. So we had to say, okay, let's not be slavish to just exactly what happens in the movie. Let's take it as the germ of an idea and let it blossom. And maybe with the musical Sugar, maybe they were too slavish to it. Meanwhile, so now here we are in 2022, where the themes of Some Like It Hot, with men cross-dressing, we have made the character of Sugar a black woman, which is how they enticed us to do the show. Because at first we were like, no, we're not going near that. We'll be killed. And the first thing the producers, Craig Zadan and Neil Marin, said to us is, we thought so that the lead girl does not have to be constantly compared to Marilyn Monroe every moment she's on stage. Let's make her be very different than Marilyn Monroe. And what do you think of the idea of her being black? And Scott and I were like, oh, we love that. Now the character can be like, a band singer on the road. And we moved it up to the early 30s. So suddenly it was like a Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Lena Horne. And that was just, that was great. And in the same way, we have taken the movie, and it's still Some Like It Hot and hopefully very funny, but I hate to use this term, it's so cheesy, but we have looked at it through a modern lens and addressing some of the issues of the day, yet staying within period. And also looking at, like, for instance, in the movie, without being too much of a spoiler of how our show is, in the movie, Jack Lemmon really enjoys being Daphne. He's having a great time. And then Osgood proposes to him, and he's just overjoyed. And, in the movie, it's really just played for great laughs, classic scenes. But we were like, well, what does it mean that he feels so comfortable as a woman? And why is he so accepting of a marriage proposal from another man? So we take it a bit further without smothering it in too much of the W word that I won't use, but and it makes it more interesting and it makes it different. You can go home and watch Some Like It Hot. It's always there. You can watch it in all its perfection. And our version is just our take on the material. And it's actually kind of fascinating now. And it's also extremely entertaining. And Scott and I have written a score that celebrates swing music and Cotton Club style songs and, Cole Porter style, Fats Waller, Duke Ellington. And we're just bathing in the warm waters of that elegant, fantastic music, the best music of all time. And
when does
that
premiere?
answer your question?
Absolutely. When can people in New York expect to see it?
We start previews November 1st. I'll believe it when I see it. They've given us 2 weeks to do technical rehearsals in the theater. Normally a big musical might even have up to a month. We have 2 weeks. So we'll see if that first preview actually gets on. But November 1st, and then it opens December 11th.
Well, if I'm in New York, I definitely will be checking it out. Another soundtrack that came out this year was a complete release of The First Wives Club, and I believe that was one of the pieces that was performed in Spain.
Yes.
Tell me about this enduring score, and again, as I put it, it's literally like a Broadway musical waiting to happen.
It was really fun to do that cue in Spain. It was the cue with the big break-in, and it's all done in the kind of Barber of Seville, the opera overture style, which I must say was inspired by the temp track. The music editor, I don't know whose idea that was, whether it was his or the director at that point was no longer on the movie. But I remember he used a lot of opera overtures. I think, it's actually also Foggy. Foggy, that's with an O. But anyway, so getting to write in that style and just, it was like my Warner Brothers cartoon version of opera overture style music, and it was so much fun to watch an orchestra play it again. I mean, that's the only thing I really miss about film scoring, because my life is very busy and I'm very fulfilled with what I do now. But being in the studio with an orchestra is a thrill beyond compare, beyond words. And to be in the studio with the Hollywood orchestras, and of course the orchestras in England that I've also had the good fortune to work with, every person is a virtuoso with as much heart as they have dexterity. And you're in this room with all these people. It's amazing that the roof doesn't just fly off of the building. All that energy and this incredible soulfulness. It's just the greatest place to be. Not to mention it's an audience for my jokes and stories. So that I do miss. And getting to watch this orchestra in Spain, who did a phenomenal job, getting to see them at first at shock at what we were asking them to learn very quickly and play. And then they peaked. And on Sunday night, they were great. They were just great. And it was a thrill.
Well, you can check out First Wives Club on La La Land Records.
Yes,
now
and
back
thank
to
you for
Louis.
your extensive liner notes.
Thank you. It was a joy to do them after Addams Family. Now we get the Wednesday miniseries, But again, you got that rolling with the live action Addams Family score. That was also on La La Land Records.
Yeah. Thank you for those.
What was it again like to just go back to Addams Family, to kind of essentially, take these iconic television shows, particularly that one, and give it real emotion? I still get teared up listening to some of the waltzes from that.
I'm lucky enough to have been blessed from wherever you think the blessing of music comes from. And I was blessed with the ability to compose and arrange and orchestrate and write lyrics and stuff. It's odd to me when I see someone who only writes music or only writes lyrics or is only an arranger. I know it's such a cliche to use the word blessed, but I was blessed. I have the ability to do all those things, and I don't differentiate between any of them as far as what brings satisfaction and joy in the work. So getting to do the Addams Family and figuring out ways to make use of the TV theme was thrilling. I loved it. And be able to, turn it on its head into becoming romantic waltzes, and then working in conjunction with my own themes, like the tango in the second movie is just like a back and forth between Vic Mizzy and me. We're doing our own tango. I love that. I love doing that. And I grew up, I literally grew up at the time of the Addams Family TV show on my TV, me watching it, not on YouTube or anything. It was me actually turning it on and watching it. So, all that music was just deeply in my head.
I think Cousin It is fiddling with our internet connection. Are you still there?
Yeah, I know. I'm there. You're there, but you're sounding kind of weird, and your face is frozen.
Okay,
but I can hear you.
Okay, there we go. Now I want to go back to a good question from Louis Bertinelli. Of all the different movie genres that you've scored over the years, is there any type of particular movie that you haven't scored and you'd like to do?
No, no. I know people say, you must, you must challenge yourself. You must work outside of your comfort zone. I'm like, fuck that. I want to be in my comfort zone. I know what I can do. I know what I can't do. I don't need to try to do things. I could never score like a Marvel movie. The biggest challenge I ever had in finally having to write serious chase music or people in peril was on Mary Poppins Returns, when it was kids in a painting as they were inside the bowl being chased by the mean wolf and his henchmen. And so for 5 minutes I had to take it very seriously. It wasn't just like Mickey Mousing because it was animated. The stakes were high for those kids, life and death. And I was scared just to do that. And there that was with animation, and you know but it was scary. And also the chase to Big Ben at the end of that movie. It's like 7 minutes long of how do you keep that going without it repeating, like, yeah, I always, on other movies where I've had to do that, I kind of feel embarrassed, uh, like, oh, this is so not me. Is it okay? Uh, so I'm happy with what I've had to do. I just, like I said, I wish there were more American President movies than I did get, but I got a few of those too, and I did enough. Like I don't often sit and watch movies now and go, damn, I wish I was doing that, or oh, I would have done a better job than that, or anything like that. I'm doing what I love to do right now, and I don't know. I sound much more uplifting than I actually am. I'm the most pessimistic person on earth. But but right now, I guess I should try to remember how I feel right now as I'm saying this. Retain it.
Well, I mean, I think you've certainly, have given uplift to a lot of people, and that's really the charm with romantic comedies, is that they just make you feel better. And again, in its way, Bros is a big feel better movie, and I really feel, that the movie is going to endure, especially on video. Again, there are a lot of people who just don't want to go to the movies, because of a lot of
Yeah,
other things.
I get it. I mean, I get all the reasons, including the fact that it was coming across more as homework, like medicine. You must come to the movie to to support this. And people just want to like only hear, hey, this movie is really funny and it's actually very sweet. And the people who have seen it, who have written me, are like, man, I never knew I was going to cry also, and hysterical. I mean, it's a shame. It is a movie to sit in a packed theater and hearing people, laughing, that sound of a full theater laughing. That's a shame when people will just watch it on Netflix and what have you. But yeah, of course, that's the good thing nowadays more than ever, is a movie lives forever. Um, and people will get to enjoy it. I did once the reality of Saturday morning of the first weekend and realizing, oh, yeah, people aren't going. And one of the reasons why is because they don't want to see two gay guys, and they don't want to see a movie about two gay guys. And that was extremely, well, the word I actually used was nauseating. I was actually nauseous from the bursting of the bubble that I live in, having lived in New York and Los Angeles and in show business. Hit in the face with the pie of reality was, oh yeah, oh, that really hurt. It was a gut punch.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, man, as they say. And again, I think again the movie will endure. I certainly enjoyed it, and a lot of people have enjoyed it. And again, your scores in general, are just kind of really tonic. They're so super melodic, and just unabashedly afraid to be music. And honestly, sometimes I feel that's missing a little bit. Just film scores that aren't afraid to be film scores, with
I mean, it
all
was
the
fun. It was,
artificiality that it
yeah.
entails.
I mean, it was fun to go like to take them, and then later on get to go change it a bit and make it. Just change the tonalities up a bit so that the melody got to be not just five little notes, but got to expand through two octaves, and it was fun to figure that out. Of So anyway, blah blah blah.
Well, Mark, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today at Film Music Live. Bros is now in theaters. Go see it. With Mark's score available on Backlot Music. A big thanks to Nikki Walsh and Quinio for today's Backlot downloads, and to Mary Grace Oglesby, Constant Communications. And thanks to Mark Northam, Mark Banning, our producer Dale Turner, and Mark, to you for joining us. I'll be seeing you all on the next Film Music Live, and go see Mark's musical. Sugar.
Something like it hot.
Something like it hot.